Hello, everyone. My name is Shauna Young. I'm so excited to be here with you this evening. It's our first webinar for our parents. We're really excited to talk to you a little bit about our office and also talk about It's Tough Being a Teen in 2015. We hope that all is well with you and that your children and our students are doing well as they're in their academic year. I know a lot of students were just applying to early actions in a number of schools, including MIT. So we'll get started with the first thing. Yes. So our agenda is to talk about a quick welcome, the logistics of the webinar. I'll do introductions of those here with me. I'll give you a quick overview of the OEOP, and then Linda and Lorraine are going to go through the presentation. Nick Holden, also our communications person, is here too. We'll have an open discussion and then we'll wrap up, hopefully in about an hour, and we'll remind you of our upcoming webinar. So I have to start by just telling you that we are really excited to be here with you. Again, my name is Shauna Young. I have Lorraine to my left. And you're right. Lorraine, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, I'm Lorraine. I'm the student program assistant for MOSTEC and a blogger there as well. I'm a student at MIT currently, and I do a lot of work with mental health on campus.
Hi, I'm really excited to meet you over the webinar. I'm Linda Borden. I'm the consultant for student support. I've been at OEOP since the beginning of February last year, and I have a master's in social work, and I've had a wonderful time getting to know your students and working on student support throughout the programs at OEOP. I have two children who are 19 and 24, so I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of where your teens are.
And Denise Mitko is online. She's a manager of programs for us, so she's listening in and hearing all of our great information. And so it's really great to have her online because she'll be able to listen to a lot of your questions and follow up as we think about how to continue to work with our program. And Nick?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Holden. I'm the Communications and Alumni Coordinator for the office. I do a lot of work making sure that we're getting in touch with you about the stuff that's happening in our programs, so making sure we're taking photos and videos of your students doing amazing things here on campus. Also trying to boost our social media presence, so please like us on Facebook if you haven't already. And watch out for our emails because we're trying to get the word out about, again, all the awesome stuff that we're doing here on campus with your students.
Great. All right. So the next one. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our mission, vision, and values. Our office was started 40 years ago, focused on making sure that science and engineering is accessible to all students. We focus on students who may not have as much access to science and engineering in their communities and their schools, but are highly talented. So I want to start by letting you know that all of your children and students are amazing, and when they get to us, we're really excited to have them here at MIT. They brighten up our campus whenever they're here, and it really brings a lot of joy to the work that we do. And then to see so many of them go off and being able to go to top schools like MIT and major in science engineering makes a huge difference. So our mission is to make science engineering accessible to all students, making sure that we focus on the communities that typically may not have access. And our values are that we want our students to learn. We want our experiences to be transformative and accessible. So many of you are your students were part of any of our programs, which includes the MICE program, a 6-week program where we bring students from across the country here to take courses in science engineering. And then we have E2, which is 1-week program. So our students come for 1 week and they learn some field of engineering that they would not have learned in their home schools. Most tech students are still online with us right now. They go through January. They'll take online courses for 4 weeks in science writing and in the field of science and engineering. And then they've right now been doing blogs and talking with each other online and having a series of webinars in science and engineering. So that will end in January. We have a group of students in Seed Academy that come every Saturday, 8 Saturdays a semester from the Boston, Cambridge, and Lawrence area. And they learn 7 different fields of engineering in 3.5 years. And then we have our middle school students that are with us in the summertime, and they do mentoring in the academic year. It's a group of about 100 students from Boston, Cambridge, and Lawrence Public Schools. So overall, we serve about 500 students locally in the Boston area and nationally through our programs. And as you all know, all of our programs are offered free of charge to all of our students because we want to make sure that access is not an issue at all in terms of the work that we're doing. So I came into my role as the executive director in 2008, and I remember that one thing I thought we were not doing well was connecting with our parents and making sure that you felt empowered to help your students kind of map out this trajectory on the STEM pipeline or STEM, really understand how to pursue STEM careers and what courses they need to take. And then when they get into these schools, these colleges, how do you help them make good decisions? So we started with parent seminars back at that time, and we haven't done them as much lately because we were trying to figure out what's the best way to connect with all of our parents from across the country at this point. So we're really excited to launch this parent seminar webinars again because now we're able to access you and give you information online, and we can reach everyone who has the ability to get online and talk with us, and also via the phone. So we'll talk about the webinar series we're having. We're starting with just talking with you and sharing our experiences and our thoughts on things you might be experiencing with your teenagers as they go through a lot of transitions, as they think about what's next, as they may be transitioning from middle school to high school, and then also thinking about college. So that's the purpose. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about it, and if you have thoughts on webinars that we can provide for you that are helpful, please let us know. Okay, so I'm going to let Linda, I think, jump in, and Lorraine.
Hi. I think at some point maybe the mic wasn't working, so I'm just going to tell you how excited I am to meet you over the webinar and let you know a little bit about what we're thinking. You do have remarkable students. We are very lucky to have them. We appreciate all their exceptional qualities. Even though they are exceptional, they do experience the same challenges that their peers experience, and you certainly see that and live that every day, a lot more than we do. We wanted to give you a couple of ideas about some of the things that we experience with your teenagers and that other teens have also have going on in their lives. And as Shauna talked a little bit about the mission and values of the work that we do, I wanted to just emphasize that our impact is to build their confidence, provide them with a sense and love of STEM, provide mentoring relationships for them to have close work with our teachers and other students, create opportunities for them to collaborate and innovate with our staff and with like-minded students, and also have the opportunities to discuss with us some of the challenges that they're facing toward their success. So what are some of the challenges and barriers that they have? As you know, high school is a really hard time for all of the students, and there's a lot of demands on their time. They're applying to college, they're in AP classes, they're trying to be an example to other students, and then they're also trying to be an example to their own peers. Even though our students particularly show a lot of resilience and persistence and creativity and motivation, they often are not measured by those skills alone, and they're often judged and have to deal with both the combination of high expectations on them and sometimes low expectations. So what are some of those internal stressors that they feel that we were wanting to talk to you a little bit about? They have a lot to accomplish to maintain their achievements. Sometimes they're feeling very overwhelmed by their expectations. Some of their schools are not as supportive about their achievements as they could be, and that some of the students wish they were. And they're constantly trying to build a positive peer culture to support their efforts as high achievers. Though we're providing cultural and academic capital to increase their participation in areas of STEM, they still have a lot of competition in front of them. They need to blend into sometimes larger groups with other high achievers where maybe their resources were not the same as other schools. So change the slide. Thanks.
Should I change it?
Yes, thank you. So we talked a little bit about some of those pressures, academic, social, pressures from home, pressures at school, and financial pressures. How are they going to afford college, and look at what's ahead of them. So this creates, let me go to the next slide. This creates a lot of expectations for them to navigate. They're managing their workload, they're having to deal with time management, competition, and then trying to find support systems that are around them. Unfortunately, they need to interpret unwritten rules every day, and sometimes it feels like there's a lot of challenges around that. So they're having to, because of social media, they're navigating rumors. They're finding that their friend groups have changed sometimes. Maybe they're getting some unexpected grades on tests that they thought that they'd prepared for. They might feel lost with new material as new students in high school, some of the ninth graders. And sadly, social dynamics for teens change all the time. Their connection to social media allows others to decide what their reputation is, and that makes them feel like they're out of control. That also creates a tremendous sense of confusion in their lives, where maybe a friend gets accepted to a program or a college and they didn't. Maybe they don't know how to stand up to a friend or how to stand up for themselves. So they're constantly looking at situations that might be out of their control. And then, of course, there's a temptation to downplay their smarts and not succeed, all because it becomes too overwhelming. So one of the articles that I was reading in Psychology Today recently was about social media as a benefit and also creating a pitfall in the lives of your teens. So on the positive side, social media can create a wonderful opportunity to immediately be connected to your friends when you need to. It can be supportive. It can be a place to go and find someone at any time of the day or night. On the negative side, it creates a lot of disconnect between what is reality and what many teens might exaggerate on social media, so that bad choices become very compelling. There's a lot of photos of destructive behaviors, and those become the new norm of what's acceptable to fit in. And fitting in becomes a really a major issue to navigate in their lives. So just as a reminder to parents, these are all rites of passage that your teens are going through. You need to recognize them and discuss what's appropriate in your lives and remind them of the values that you're trying to instill that are non-negotiable for their safety and to continue them on the path that they want to be on. Dr. Charmaine Jackman, who's a social worker and psychologist, will be joining us at our next webinar, and she'll cover a lot more about atypical and typical developmental behaviors in this age group. So we're not going to quite go into that. I also want to remind you that communication is so important, and keeping clear expectations are really, it's really important. Sorry, we're having a slide. So we talked a little bit about some of these on the slide that you're seeing now. Feeling overwhelmed, feeling the sense of social anxiety, will I fit in? Why are people getting into programs and I'm not? And then all the temptations around social media. I think continuing to remind them of the fact that you are the most important means of rational support in their life will create an ongoing sense of their safety and their self-care. So one of the slides that I'm kind of the perfect reminder of what it's like to be your teen, and I'll read it. I think that the biggest problem is balancing homework from 7 different classes with finding time to sleep and take a break every once in a while also dealing with everyday social programs by trying to fit in. This was written in an article written by a student not in our programs, but I thought it was just the perfect way to identify what your teen is going through every day. Lorraine is going to talk a little bit about the negative narrative that starts to become their internal voice when they start to feel all this pressure and they can't seem to
break out of that sense of this is their life and the negative aspect of it. Lorraine.
Great. So there's this amazing TED Talk by a woman named Allison Ledgerwood from UC Davis. If you have time, I think it's 10 minutes long, you should go watch it. And it talks about how humans, just by virtue of who we are, just are really good at getting stuck in the negative and always becoming just lost and never being able to see the upside of something even if things get better. So if you remember probably the recession in 2008, so consumer confidence dropped and stayed low for many years afterwards, even when the economy got better. And this stays with us for other things. So there are two ways of students being able to get back to normal. If we just practice talking about the good things or being grateful for things or just thinking on the upside, then eventually that becomes normal. But it takes a while. So if you're worried about your students or it's a really stressful senior year, I was there not too long ago, then there are certain signs of distress that are really important to notice. And teens are really good at hiding these things or thinking that they're really good at hiding them. But always people give off clues when they're feeling distressed. And sometimes it's normal stress, and that's good and motivating and life-affirming, and sometimes it just gets too overwhelming and it becomes distress. So knowing the difference and being able to tell what's different from normal is really important. And then, of course, just always talk with your teen about things if you're worried at all. It's better to talk with them about it and have it turn out to be nothing than to not talk about it and then have it turn out to be something that they're really worried about and want to talk to someone about. So some of these are a lot of indicators of distress. So for students, if somehow they start missing classes or missing school or being really unmotivated in classes, and that's different from normal because a lot of our students are very high achieving and really love school, then that's something to look out for. If it turns out that all of a sudden they're doing poorly in classes for some reason or just can't concentrate or invest their time or motivate themselves to do work, then that's also distress. And sometimes for a lot of English class or personal essay classes, students get to talk about how they're feeling. If those themes turn kind of dark or depressed, then that's also something to know if you ever proofread your students' essays, get a chance to read them. People are really good at writing, so it's a good way of knowing how they're feeling. And then these are just other things to look out for, indicators of how they're feeling, even if it's not related to academics, because there's so many social pressures, as Linda was mentioning earlier, and other just big life questions that a lot of teens get into. So any of these are really important to look out for. Changes in weight and sleeping and eating habits. A lot of times students, and especially teens and then once they get into their college years, they forget that all of these things are necessary for humans, and they always just think that academics is necessary or social life is important, but also like taking care of themselves are important, and they forget about that. So lack of energy is something to look out for. Changes in personality. You've been raising these children for like 18 years, so you could probably tell if their personality changes pretty quickly or if they start getting angry or irritable. It's pretty common in senior year especially and in high school and college, but it's definitely things to look out for and talk to your teens about if you see it in them. And then just a couple of tips for talking about these concerns with your teens. It's always better, as I said before, to talk instead of to keep it to yourself and then realize that it was something that they want to talk to you about. It's easier for teens if you take the first step because oftentimes they don't want to show that they're struggling or that they're having concerns. And of course, it's always better to be non-judgmental because it's so stressful. I'm sure you know, they know, everyone knows how stressful it is. And it's really welcoming, and it'll allow them to open up to you if you just say, I'm worried about you, instead of, I don't know, something more judgmental than that, because you show them that you love them and you care for them and you just want the best. Yeah, and then these are some specific tips Open-ended questions are great, like how are you doing, what's up in your life, is anything new? It'll kind of just open the table for them to talk about things rather than specific questions like how's that essay going, or things like that, because then they'll focus on just talking about academics or just talking about that one friend that you know about. But if you just open it up, then they'll be willing to talk to you about more things. Being non-judgmental, as I said before. And then I know some schools have counselors who can talk to students. Some schools have advisors. Anything that you think would help your teen, if they have a support network at school, or you as a parent and your family can be really supportive, anything like that would be really great, just to create a support network and a safety net for them in case they ever want to talk to someone or deal with some issues. Yeah, and the last point on there, the know your own limits. Sometimes it's really easy to take everyone else's issues onto yourself. So even if your teen is struggling, there are other people who can help you, so can help you help them. So if you reach out to a spouse, a partner, another family member, the school itself, a lot of people are there to support your teen, especially because they're in their senior year or sometime in high school, and really can help that kind of, can get help with that kind of life direction and what they want to do and where their next steps are, and there are lots of people willing to help, especially here at the OEOP too.
I'm going to go to the one that says reframe. 21. Hi. So a lot of difficulty that teens have is trying to reframe and create balance that Lorraine was talking about and get their head out of that negative self-talk that they can get into. And reframing and creating a balance takes a lot of encouragement, and it takes a lot of self-care and awareness. They do need to find time to sleep. They do need to find free time, and they do need to make time with family. And these are things that can encourage them to start to look at the positive aspects of their life and some of the support systems in their life. And they've accomplished so many things. They're participating in OEOP. They have a lot of possibilities ahead of them. They have a lot of connections they've made through their interest in STEM. This has created new goals and new perspectives from them. And if you have a chance, and you can write in the Q&A box maybe a few other ones that I haven't come up with, that would be great. Because every day they are looking at the next slide, which is distractions. They have all of this going on. People are comparing themselves. There's a lot of peer pressure. There's a lot of negative thinking. There's a lot of opinions, and there's a sense of disappointment. Will I make it? Will I fit in? Will I get into college? Will I finish that essay? How will I do on my SATs? And all of those distractions can be framed as challenges and not as distractions, but it's easier said than done. So we look at coping strategies. What are some of the ways that we like to ratchet down that high possibility of making everything negative in our life be the most important thing in our life? And some of the coping strategies that we utilize with and have talked to your teens about are creating realistic expectations, finding ways to measure their progress, celebrating milestones along the way as opposed to just looking at what they haven't done, developing a plan and not looking at the negative aspects of what is left to get done, pacing themselves, which is really hard to do. They are on a treadmill. They're moving really fast. They have a lot of energy, and the minute they have free time, they immediately think they should be doing something else. So I think it's important to remind them that they should take a moment to just breathe and look at some of the things that they've done that are so successful. Set goals that include time to relax and be with family, and don't assume that just because things are going slowly that it means that they're off track. One of the really important coping strategies that I like to remind students about is the importance of building a really strong support network. And support networks come in the form of families, friends, community members. It provides friendship, activity, reassurance, guidance, help with decision making. It's really important to have that be a really solid piece in your life. And it's not it's important for you to remind your team who are those people in their life that are important to you, and who are the important, supportive, positive influences on their life. And it's not necessary to have that be a lot of people, but to have them be reminded that who is available, who they trust, and who is a great influence on them. That's what's important to them, and that's what can help them feel secure. And there are a couple of strategies that we use in social work that are what we call task-based strategies. And it's just a way to start to look at some of the problems in their life and create some solutions for them. And sometimes it just means that you are actually just stepping back and looking at the problem from a different perspective. And one of the techniques is to actually ask not what is the problem, but how can you view this problem? And sometimes you're exploring exceptions to it. Is it always this intense? Does it always last this long? Is this the biggest problem this moment? And to just start to strategize on ways to make that problem seem less immense to them. Another way to do that is to scale it, from 1 to 10. If you have 5 problems that are on a scale of 1, are those things that maybe you can start to talk about and focus on, and then save some of the larger ones and build resources around those, or start to use that support network that we talked about a minute ago to help you focus on ways to attack those problems. And then another way to look at it is, what if that problem didn't exist? What changes would you have to make in your life if that problem didn't exist? And I know I found it with some students to say, if you asked a friend who had that problem what they would do, and then how you would advise that friend, sometimes it's a great way to look at it. Family support is really important. Being clear with your expectations is really important. Reminding your team that they are a member of your family, that even though they're going through a lot of pressures in their life, they still have a role in your family, and that families support each other in times of need, they're loyal to each other, they have reasonable rules and expectations, they make time for one another. And this can help your team be better able to assume responsibilities for their actions and exercise self-control and make thoughtful decisions. So you're helping to show them that they have the tools to access and deal with the many stressors in their lives. You're helping them create this environment for them to view their strengths and their skills, even though there's so many bad influences and so much tendency to get off of their path. I want to acknowledge your efforts as a family support system and how important that is to your teams, and all the hard work and dedication that it takes to create this path that you've created together with your team. It's so frustrating and confusing, and at times it seems like their life is so full of emotional, academic, personal, and social challenges. But on the flip side, your teams do talk to us about how much they appreciate your encouragement and all the sacrifices you've made on their behalf, and how grateful they are. And although we are yet another program in their lives to set expectations in their lives, we want to continue to emphasize that we are here to add the element of positive, supportive, academically and personally enriching community that encourage and inspire your teams. So we hope that you'll keep in touch with us. We want to know how it's going with your teams. We're so grateful for their hard work and their determination and all the efforts that you have made to allow us the time with your kids. So I want to thank you for that and turn it back over to Shauna and look at questions if you have any.
Yeah, I think Lorraine is going to do some building of the questions. So actually, Nick, do you want to talk about how to add, just in case, because we didn't go to the webinar logistics, so they know how to add questions if they have any?
Yeah, absolutely. So there should be a Q&A box on your screen. So we have both a chat and a Q&A, and the best place to enter your questions is the Q&A box. Maureen's currently looking through there to pick out some for her and Linda to address. But do we have one to get started with? Or? Okay, well, I can tell you some of the comments that came through in the chat, too. So, but also, if you have any questions for right now, please let us know, and we can try to address them. Definitely the themes of the comments that I received so far are that, that yes, it looks like a lot of our OEOP students and alumni are a little bit stressed out, that they are high-performing students and that they do need to look to find some balance. So, I don't know, Linda, do you have any more thoughts about, these are, super high-performing students and, they're trying to get into some of the, the top colleges across the country. Like, how do you keep that balance when you've got all those stressors? Are there any, like, more specific strategies that you would share with them?
I think that your teens do a really good job of trying to sort out the important aspects of their life. And sometimes that seems like a big circle that they can never slow down. It just keeps spinning. Having them piece it out into manageable moments. If they have college applications that are due November 1st, after November 1st, that drops off. When they start to put those in manageable buckets, then they can start to work on those. But there is a lot of pressure. It's undeniable. I think using each other as a sense of support is great. They have a wonderful community through their connections with students and staff at OEOP, and making use of that is really important. We are here to talk with them and provide resources to them. I think a lot of the students from MOSTEC use the blog posts as a way to communicate some of their stresses, and I think it's a great sense of relief. So communication is one strategy that really helps. And then some of the other strategies of just trying to sit down and talk to your student and not say what is the problem, but maybe look at a way to view it in smaller pieces would be one way.
Can I add something too? Yeah, I would add to this also. My daughter is 9 and she's in 4th grade, so definitely not a teenager yet. But she's struggling with adjustment of, like, now she has to turn her homework in. On time she has to remember to bring the homework home, and she gets weekly assessments on how much homework she's gotten done. And so she's feels bad personally when she doesn't get it all right as she's used to in the past, and she also doesn't always remember to bring her homework home. So my first inclination was sort of like, let me just tell her to do it right, and that wasn't working at all. So what I tried was this, okay, I'm going to be an active participant, which is hard when you have a teenager. Even with a 9-year-old, it's a little hard, but, okay, let's go. I check with her before we leave the school and actively say, do you have it? She gets a little temperamental, and then we get home and it's not there. So it's like, okay, let's open it up and just, keep trying, I guess, is one thing that I've seen. And again, I don't have a teenager yet, but what I recognize is that she felt like I was trying to help her by working with her to make sure she has her homework and getting it done and giving her strategies. That was much better than just like telling her, what she should have done correctly, because she also was already doing that herself. So she's saying to herself, well, I'm a bad person because I didn't do this thing. My homework wasn't done, or I keep forgetting to bring my homework home, so I'm going to be a failure in school because I didn't bring my 4th grade homework home. So I am helping her understand that she can still be a success, and switching up, probably counter to how my parents would have done it, to say, how can I help you, and make sure together we'll make sure your homework is done. So strategies and breaking things apart, as Linda said, I think has helped her a little bit more. Again, she does get frustrated that maybe I'm asking her about her homework, but then she feels better when we get home and she has her homework versus feeling bad about not having it at all. So from me, I feel like, basically staying engaged and figuring out the best way you can without making your child frustrated. In the end, I feel like there is an appreciation for being there and asking questions and helping them with their strategies. And I think advocating for them, and one thing I've tried to do too is check in with the teacher even when she doesn't want me to try to say, like, you know, how are things going? Not a formal thing. I used to be a teacher. I know we feel like sometimes we need to have parent-teacher conferences, which are really good to do and to time, but also having that presence of, like, walking in the school sometimes with my daughter and just having a conversation with the teacher and letting them know what we're working on informally, I think has helped the teacher know that I'm trying to be an active participant in helping Sophia, and then it's helping Sophia feel like she will be held accountable without sort of being punished for doing it wrong. So those are my 2 cents.
Those are great. I think those are really helpful. Having teenagers, it is hard because they want to be treated as though they're adults. So I think that partnering that Shauna just mentioned is really important. And there are days where they don't want anything to do with your advice. And I think that at some point you have to address, yes, I will step away, but I'm also here to help you. So if you can find what I can do to help instead of telling me what I can't help you with, that would work for both of us. And sometimes diffusing that high pitch of resistance is really hard to do. I sympathize, but it's really important to remind them that you are there to help them. And from all of our conversations with your students, I can't tell you how much they mention how much you've done for them in their lives. So you can remind them that we know that. Lorraine, I know we had a couple of other questions we were looking at that you had emailed to us, and thank you for doing that. That was really helpful.
We had one about the balance, too, I think.
So to address one question, a couple of people have asked this, whether or not the PowerPoint slides are going to be shared. We will send them to you afterwards, so you can take another look at them again.
Sleep has come up a few times. I don't know if others want to address that. I had sent out something to our seed parents about sleep and the importance of sleep and how hard it is to convince your child to stop doing what they're doing and actually go to sleep. And one of the studies that I read was that it is so detrimental to your grade point average when you are arriving at school with sleep deprivation. And again, it's really hard to explain that to children who feel like they have to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning to get something done. It will get done, and I think backing it up to using their planner, planning their time, maybe working on it a little sooner or taking it into small pieces might get it done a little sooner, but emphasizing that sleep and self-care that Lorraine has talked about and we have talked about with other MOSTEC students is non-negotiable. That has to be really important in their lives. So that's something that it comes up a lot, and I don't know if you have other thoughts about that, Lorraine.
Yeah, and I can add to that. So I think a lot of the reasons why we, or students and we in general, just choose not to sleep is because we think we have to put 100% of our effort into everything that we do, which is impossible with the hours in the day. So something that someone told me way back when I was in high school, and I've tried to keep doing it until now, is that spend 90% of your effort on everything. Spend most of your effort on things, but it's totally okay to cut the last 10%, especially if that's going to take 90% of your effort, because people try to perfect everything and take hours and hours and effort on that. But it's okay to have something that you've put a lot of work into and not have it be perfect, which I think students, especially in high school and college, just forget about all the time. So long as you put your heart and work into it, it's okay not to stay up all night and pull all-nighters for it. So it's really good to remind your students that as long as they put effort into it, it's definitely worth all their work, and they can sleep instead of crash doing the rest of it.
We have a question, too, about online games, and, you know, how do you help a teen who distracts themselves as a stress reliever by playing online games with their friends, and then you look around and they've sunk a lot of time into the game. So I don't know, Linda or Lorraine, if you have thoughts on strategies.
I know that Lorraine and I talked a little bit with the MOSEC students, and some of them needed to take some time away from what they were expected to do to gain perspective on what they eventually have to do. And they listed a number of things that they like to do. Some were taking walks, some were meditating, some were watching television, playing a game, connecting with a friend. Those are important. And I know when it gets to be too much time doing something that's away from what they should be doing, then setting some boundaries around that as a parent won't be met with, it will be met with resistance, but the benefit is that then they will get to bed earlier, they'll get their work done, they'll be able to concentrate on it, and they will have some time to do what they enjoy. So setting up a schedule of, yes, you can play those games, but that is a time-limited experience for you, and then you're going to go and do other things. I don't know if you have any
I can add
thoughts.
to that also. So we had, this is very interesting. So I believe in MICE, we had the students who were in the computer science course, they had to develop their own games, and one of them actually developed one exactly for this issue, that they found that they were like, you know, they needed a break, but then it was too long of a break. So it's supposed to be 5 minutes. So the app would basically get them back on task after the 5 minutes. So I think saying, as Linda said, you can do it, but there's a certain time frame in which they get to take that break. Ideally, it coming from them or something like an app that they're using. It was very interesting where these students were self-aware, so they were trying to create a solution, their own solution. So it didn't feel like their parents were imposing on them, well, you only get 10 minutes with this. But I do think some kind of way in which they get a break, and then there's a time frame. And I think also one thing I've thought about is, you know, letting them know what else they could be doing with that time. So active participation, I know that games are exciting and things like that. So I tried with Sophia to give her, instead of doing that, well, then I need to just go take her to do something else. And then she's at least engaged and not just sitting in front of the computer or on her app or things like that. I know teenagers have a lot of different things, so it might be helping them, you know, giving them another option. So maybe a study group that they can have, or a different strategy in which they can use where it's not just in front of the computer. It might be good to ask them. I think one thing I find is sometimes I'm trying to impose the strategy or solve the problem, and without asking Sophia or asking our students, how would you do this? So even when they're with us on campus, you know, I have conversations, especially when students are not meeting expectations. What would you do in this situation? What solution would you suggest? Well, if they do something that's not as great, what do you think the consequence would be? And it's very interesting to hear their perspective, and actually it becomes less resistant in terms of like what should be done. A lot of times they would penalize themselves much more than I would. And so, you know, when we come to a compromise on what the solution is, it doesn't feel like, again, you know, they're being given a solution or imposed upon. It's like they're part of it. So that might be helpful. This can be something we can try to follow up with also. And if parents, if you're online and you want to give a suggestion through you can type that in for us, and we can share out your thoughts on how to help in this scenario in particular.
I know there are a couple other questions. I don't know if Lorraine, you want to address some of these questions. I had some that I had thought of, but do you want to go ahead and
Yeah, so one of the questions was, how do you talk to your child if they don't get into their number one choice? I think that's really difficult, especially since the years of high school are the pressure cooker for trying to get into schools. So when we don't get into them, it's kind of like, what is our future? And students are really good at focusing on that one question instead of thinking that they have so many years and there are so many different ways their lives can go. I know what was helpful for me when decisions came out was just for my parents to be to be supportive and just to remind me that there were so many different ways, things that could happen, ways that my life could turn out, especially since I didn't know what I wanted to study, so I could have ended up anywhere and done anything. I don't know if Linda has any tips on that.
I think it comes down a little bit to managing expectations and that looking at fit. And sometimes colleges have a very different sense of fit than we might have. And talking a little bit of where do you fit best and looking at a lot of possibilities instead of just the one. And I know that's really hard to do when the focus is on getting into that one college and they feel like that is the best place for them. But there are other places where they will have that wonderful education, that sense of a great community, access to a lot of resources, and feel like they can transition and really be themselves. And sometimes having that conversation with them about let's look at your expectations for this one school and why is it this one school and what other schools have those same elements but might also be a great fit for you. And then it's true for a lot of anticipating getting into a program or a school is to try and manage those expectations as hard as that is.
Yeah, I definitely can add to those thoughts. Every year we have students who apply to the top schools in the country, and many of them, including MIT, may or may not get their top choice, and I think it's really hard. What I talk with them about is that first of all, we want them to take risks. We want them to apply to schools that are schools they want to go to, which may not have a high acceptance rate, but then we want them to apply to multiple schools. So I think getting in now and helping them with their strategy of applying to so many wish schools, so many target schools, and so target means that they match the academic profile of the school, and they would be very happy going there. And then you have your safety schools, which they surpass the academic expectations, but they still would be okay attending those schools. So making sure that they have that diversity in their school selection. If they are deciding to apply to a lot of highly competitive schools, they may want to have a longer school list. So some of our students, they will apply to 20 colleges or more, which is a large list, but they probably should have at least 10 to 15, again, if they are applying to a lot of competitive schools. And I think the other thing is when I talk about it, and it's hard for me to understand it myself also, is when one of my admissions officers talked to me and said, you know, the admissions process is like building a mosaic. Any day of the week, the mosaic could be different because of the applicant pool and because of the selection process. And there are so many talented students and there's so little or few opportunities. So I don't think it's a function of the student themselves at all. But I think being available to let them know that they are amazing independent of the decision. And when I was applying to schools, I tell your students and our students this a lot. The one thing that I reflect on in terms of the process is I was very safe. I didn't take a risk when I applied to undergrad. And so I got into all of my schools, but I also sometimes wonder, well, what if I would have gone for that weak school and seen what happened? Also, when I was making my final decision, one of my mentors, family friends, I was really struggling with where to go. And he said, you make a decision and then you make it right. So I think for them to understand that at the end of the day, they're going to choose a college to go to. And once they do that, take full advantage of being there at that place to make sure that they have the best experience possible. And I think letting them, or you also recognizing that in the end, if they do that and it's still not a good fit, they can also make decisions to change where they are. But if they focus so much on like where I wish I could have been, no school they go to is going to be a good school. So they've got to focus in on I'm here now. What are all the things I can get out of this experience? And so I think many of our students end up doing that. And the other thing is college is fun. I mean, it is fun. So, you know, even when I think helping them remember even now in their senior year, possibly if they're seniors, this is their senior year of high school. And with all the pressures, all the things they have going on, they don't get this moment back. They don't get the senior year back. And we talk to them a lot about that when they're here with us over the summer or whatever program they're in. We remind them of how unique and special they are and how they won't have this moment again. And so how do you take full advantage of this opportunity? And I think that should happen across all segments of their lives. There's times when they're in their life. So that might help a little bit, providing them mechanisms to enjoy, providing them distractions in this case. You know, what I try to say, too, is the waiting period is the waiting period. You can't do anything about it. So you can choose to stress out or be anxious for 3 months, or if you're doing early action for a month or a month and a half, but you're still going to wait a month and a half. So maybe you can provide some kind of distraction of going out to the movies with them or some kind of fun day trip, things on the weekend. You know, those kinds of things might be helpful for them because they probably are thinking about it a lot, and they will think about it until the final decisions come out for early action or for regular action. So that's what I would suggest. And if you have questions about that, that's the kind of stuff we can definitely follow up on. It's something that a lot of our alumni, all of them, go through. I'll tell you 1 or 2 quick stories also. We have a couple of alums who are awesome. They're not here at MIT. One of our alum applied to 22 colleges, and he's now, I think, going into his senior year at Harvard. And he told our middle school students that he applied to 22 schools and got into 21. And the one he did not get into was MIT. So he's going to Plan B, Harvard down the street. That's the first thing I'll say. And then we just saw another one of our alums who's now at Princeton, and she talked about how, you know, her #1 choice was MIT, and she got denied admission last year to get into MIT. So now she had to choose between Princeton and Stanford, and she's at Princeton. So I think it may feel like the world is coming to an end when they don't get that dream school, but the reality is that there are so many dream schools, phenomenal dream schools, and they are going to get into the school that's best for them, and we want them to enjoy once they get there. But these are words. I know sometimes when you're in it, it's a little harder. It doesn't feel that way. And so any way in which we can be helpful to you and to our students and your children, please let us know, because we also have a lot of people who have those conversations like Lorraine and other alums who are closer to that moment in time, and they may be able to help and give more perspective. Do we have any last questions that we want to address?
There's a question that came in a couple of times about what is the transition from high school to college like, and how parents can help navigate that process with their students.
I know it'd be interesting to hear your perspective, having navigated that more recently. I will say that there's a lot of preparation for students on transitioning from high school to college. It becomes a conversation amongst their friends, amongst their teachers, amongst the community. There is very little for parents about transitioning your child to college. And as someone who has done that twice with my 2 children, it is overwhelming. I will completely acknowledge that. I think one thing to acknowledge is that they are growing up, and everything they have done to this point is to get them there safely and happily. You have a tremendous sense of pride in them and expectation for them, and then suddenly they're launching into a life where you feel like you're just watching their back walk away. But there's so many good things that come of their independence, and I think that they will test their independence between now, for those who have seniors, when they're starting to get their acceptances in December, and then again for those who are waiting until April. There is a lot of testing time where they are going to be looking at themselves as very different individuals. They're going to be looking at themselves leaping forward into a part of their lives that include you in some respects and don't in others. And I think having those conversations early on is really important for both you and for your child to start to look at what those expectations are and to acknowledge the fact that you're proud they're going on to something that is bigger than what they have been doing before. But it is a very hard, I know someone had written it really beautifully about how the contours of our influence and support change when you transition your child to college. You become a very different individual in their life. They are going to rely on you in ways that you did not expect. And right now they may not seem to be relying on you, but they're looking back at their life, they're talking about their life, and it actually becomes a very positive part of your relationship to look forward to. So there's that plus as well. I don't know how your experience was moving on to college for your parents and you.
I think students a lot of times when they go to college, they jump at that freedom and at that individual path that they have. And a lot of times they, me included, just kind of leave behind the family and kind of just want to go out and do things on their own and be independent. And then we realize we don't have all the skills to be completely independent immediately. So what was really useful for me was when my parents, they took a step back. They didn't call me all the time, but they were always there for me. So when I wanted to call and when I had a question or needed help or kind of just floundered and didn't know what to do, they were always there for me, and they kept on reminding me that I could contact them or call them or email them or Skype or anything like that whenever I needed to. So just knowing that they were there as a support for me was super helpful, especially when things just got crazy or out of control and I didn't know what to do. Them just being there was great. And someone asked similarly, what is the most difficult part of going from high school to the first year of college? I think it's that we think that we're independent and that we know everything that there is to do to have a life. And we don't realize how much support that our parents and families have given us before that. So realizing that not all of your meals are there for you, set for your table, and students all of a sudden have to go to the dining hall or have to cook or something and take that first step by themselves instead of someone calling them for dinner is just something that we completely don't realize is all of a sudden not there for us. So it's even simple things like that that I think we think we're totally fine being independent doing, and then we realize that there's a lot more to learn. So helping your teens remember that there are things that have always been taken for granted or been there for them, and then they have to kind of go out and do those for themselves is really helpful.
I think also for, I've heard from a variety of people who have gone on to college that being able to manage this immense amount of free time that you suddenly have, where you had no free time in high school, every minute of every day is booked, and suddenly you have 4 hours between a class. And that is overwhelming. And I will never forget my daughter sitting on her bed at her college saying, I don't know what to do. And she was seized in fear. And I counseled her to look on the website and try and find whether she could do some community service, do some tutoring, find a group that was similar, that had a similar interest, that had a sport that she liked, that she could be involved in, and actually move out of that fear of having all this time. The time was all of a sudden a huge burden, and that was really interesting because right now your children are begging for more time, and suddenly they'll go to college and they'll have this time and not know what to do with it. So one suggestion that I have is to do that homework before they get there. Go on the website, start to look at groups, clubs, interests, activities that those colleges have that they want to join, and start to make those connections. I know all colleges have Facebook groups that they can join for freshmen, and it's really good to start to put those in place, not to create this you know, filling time moment, but just to have that sense that they do have something to do that is going to support their interest and make them feel good about themselves and meet some other people. Are there other questions there? a good thing. That's a good question about books to read, and I'm happy to look into that and try and send something out. There are certainly a lot of books out there, and some of them are very psychologically based, and it'd be interesting when we have our webinar with Dr. Jackman. She may have some great suggestions about that. So tune in. We'll try and get in touch with you with some and answer some of your questions, and also provide you with some additional resources. We might, when we send the slides out, maybe we can put some suggestions on the slides as well. So.
Okay, so it's shortly after 9, and I know that we wanted to spend a good amount of time with you all this evening. I want to thank you and remind you of our upcoming webinars that we have listed. So we have one on counseling your child through their high school experience, and then we also are going to have a great one in early January on the financial aid and college affordability process. And we will be sending you out a survey to just get feedback on how well this went and suggestions that you might have for other topics. That will go out in the next couple days. And I think that's it. So thank you so much for your time this evening. We're looking forward to our upcoming conversations. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email us at the parent seminar email list or OEOP, and we will get back to you. So I guess everyone want to say good night? All right.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
All right, thanks.